Did you know that most women would rather talk about their own death than their finances? Well, we're here to change that. Welcome to Bixie Speaks, where we speak honestly about money and share our personal stories of making it, losing it, and investing it. We focus on real-life situations that affect us, women, living in cities all around the world. From Bangkok to Bangalore, we're just out here trying to live our best lives. To do that, we've got to turn our finances around from being obstacles to living our dreams to becoming opportunities to make our dreams a reality. In each episode, we tackle a typical life event in the lives of urban women the world over, and the role that money plays in helping or harming our situations. We invite guests to share their experiences, from mating and money to marriage and money to fertility and finances, and we share our tips, tools, and strategies that have helped us. Nothing is off limits. I'm your host, Rosalia Gitau, CEO of Bixie, a financial platform aimed at helping women take control of their finances and live the life of their dreams. Full disclaimer, Bixie and Bixie Speaks is not a financial advisor and does not provide financial advice. We're an education platform. Learn more about us and our community on www.bixie.com or download the Bixie app on Apple Store or Google Play. Welcome to the wonderful world of Bixie. So let's get into it. Today, we are tackling family and finances. Specifically, we're looking at the nuclear family, spouses and children. From Bangkok to Bamako, the family is the key socioeconomic unit in society, regularly deciding how to allocate resources within itself and with the wider community and country. But it all starts at home. Today, we're going to discuss how we, as mothers, wives, and working women, tackle the issue of finances within our family. What works, what doesn't, and everything in between. And no better person to talk about this with than my friend, Sara D'Anzeo. Sara is from Italy and lives in Bangkok. She is the co-founder of We Brand, an initiative to promote women entrepreneurs, and she works for the United Nations. She's also a mother to a toddler and wife to an entrepreneur. Sara, welcome to the show.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me, Rosalia.
So, first off the bat, what role does money play in your family's dynamics?
Well, very important. I guess, family gives us freedom, gives us stability, gives us peace of mind. I think, for us as a family, we are an expat family, so it gives us the chance to travel, visit back our extended family. So it's quite important. But it's not everything. So money, it's important, but we always tend to prioritize our family comes first. So we always, like for instance, we said no to jobs that could give us more money, but not the lifestyle and the family time that we want. So it's important to keep that in perspective because money comes and goes, and we know that. So we want to live comfortably. But at the same time, we also want to dedicate enough time to ourselves and as a family.
So money is kind of a lubricant to living,
right?
In your case. Do you guys speak openly about money? So I'll give you an example so I can break the ice. Mm-hmm. My husband and I speak extremely openly about money. We actually, a lot of it was because before we got married, I had gone to law school in the US. So I ended up with quite a lot of student loan debt. Mm. So while we were dating and when we knew we were looking to become serious, I laid it all out on the table. I'm like, this is how much debt I have so that you know what you're getting into. Please tune into our episode on money and mating to find out when is the optimal time to bring up your financial situation to a person that you're dating.
When did you do that?
So I was friends with Patrick for a long time. We'd known each other for a while. So I think it was probably maybe 4 months into dating, I just laid it all on the table. Like, this is my financial situation. Because I really didn't want to, have somebody walk in blind and suddenly they realize like, whoa, you have so much student loan debt. I thought that was really unfair. And in a way, it was kind of a saving grace because it kickstarted a bigger conversation about money. So like, how much are we going to make? What was my strategy for paying down the debt? What were our shared visions about what we wanted to achieve with money? So I'm kind of weirdly grateful for that debt, which thank God I have since paid off. But it's because I was in such a financial precarious situation, I needed to prioritize this conversation, and it really had attendant impacts. So, while we were planning the wedding, we didn't have a ridiculous huge wedding because I was like, that doesn't make monetary sense, right? And we both knew that at the outset. So I think it was a good thing to kind of take that negative, huge financial burden that I had, and we turned it into a really positive thing. And as a result, money has always been very much a frank part of our conversation. So we've been married now for 6 years, and every quarter we operate like a corporation. We actually have a corporation, and we have quarterly reports. So we say this is, we know what our budget is, we know what our investments are, we plan also, well, what do we think we want to do with this chunk of money? Do we want to invest it? Do we want to buy property? Like, we strategically plan our finances as a family, and it's just become such a knee jerk. And a lot of that was because of the huge debt that I brought in, really making sure that we were constantly checking in. And that just carried over. So we really do, it sounds not sexy. Don't worry. There's a lot of other sexy things happening. But once a quarter, we sit down with a PowerPoint. So it's an opportunity also for us to like, look at all of our situations and be like, this is our current financial situation. How do we want to move through it? What is our next step moving forward in the next quarter? And it's been really fantastic, I have to say. And like, I think like that's how we talk about money. We talk about it so, I wouldn't even just say openly. It's more, we are strategic about how we discuss money. And I find that it actually helps keep the sexy time sexy, because we're like, okay, we've already met, as a corporation, we've met about our quarterly meeting. Now we can go and have fun. As opposed to, I find that in relationships, if you don't just have like the quarterly meeting, one person is like, my husband spends too much. And the other person, it's a little bit like resentment building, as opposed to, yes, we sat down, we had a meeting about it, we agreed on certain parameters, and we move forward. So that's how we handle.
Oh, that's fantastic. Money. I think it's a great approach. I think like we had conversations about money when we were dating already, but it was more about sharing what kind of lifestyle we expected from our life, because we wanted to be together, and we just wanted to make sure that we had similar expectations. And I thought that was also important, like almost from the onset, like to establish that, clear and common vision about what we expect for the future. Because I had some friends of mine ended up, dating guys that maybe were not as ambitious, and that affects obviously the relationship.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to have that experience. So I wanted to discuss that early in the relationship. I mean, not too early.
Yeah. So actually, when did you start?
I mean, I would say like, once you start really, really dating more seriously, you introduce your friends and family, at that point.
When did you tell your husband, this is how much money I earn or I make a year?
No, that wasn't disclosed so quickly. I think from both sides. But
when do you remember when?
Maybe so. When I think like I distinctively remember that when we started getting really serious. So when we decided to formalize a relationship. With the marriage, basically, to get, that was the moment where we really got more serious, talking also about the financials.
After engagement or before engagement?
I think before engagement.
Okay,
before
but like
engagement.
you knew you were heading there, and you're like, okay, now it's time to show all of our
cards. Now it's like, now
let's
let's really get serious. We're doing this, so let's do it properly, and let's really discuss the finance side, which I think it's essential.
100%.
So
that's
you
when
can't,
you're like, this is how much I make. How much do you make?
And how much you want to make, how much we expect to make, how much, I mean, the question there was more about how much we expect to share. how would you contribute to, because like now we're looking forward. So, how do you want to contribute to the family? Like, how do we share the expenses? How do we share the earnings? What's your expectation? And I think that this is a very important, conversation to have as soon as you decide to get serious with your partner, because you don't want to get into a relationship and then discover that there is, that your partner has a different approach to money, that they want to be, let's say, independent. In case you don't want to be independent, you want to join the earnings. And I think also for women, it's important to have that conversation, because we often, we become the main caregivers and the main, the ones that take care of the domestic work more. So it's important that we establish, how much we're going to financially contribute, and, that sort of compensating that sort of, domestic unpaid work that we do more into the family. So anyways, we had that conversation, and we actually decided to do a prenup, which I thought that it was also a good way to really go through the details of the assets and how we wanted to manage that, and, how we expected to, in case of, some of the rupture of the marriage, which I thought that was also interesting, because
I love that you just shared that, because a lot of people don't just share things like that, because that's quite a personal thing.
Yeah.
But I think it's really important that you share with our listeners that there are many ways in which you can have this conversation.
Right.
Like, it doesn't just have to be, oh, I'm having this conversation with myself, or like we talked about it for 5 minutes. Like, you can, prenuptial agreements are absolutely on the table in terms of how you want to, share and protect people's assets. So I think that's fantastic that you chose that option.
I don't know what's the percentage today of divorces?
Over 50%.
Yeah, over 50%. So I think, it's, you hope for the best, and you work for, the longest marriage possible and the everlasting relationship. So that's definitely, I'm not looking to divorce my husband anytime. But
if you're listening, she's not looking to divorce.
Yeah, but I think it's a good way to really go in depth on how you want to manage your finances, and make sure that there is the same vision from the other side, so you don't have surprises along the way. And that was the moment when we decided also how much we wanted to proportionally contribute to the sharing expenses, and how much we wanted to make. So it started a very detailed conversation about
Absolutely. Because you have to have that conversation when you're drafting a legal agreement. Funny you should say that. We actually had the more detailed discussion on, line items after we got married. So after we had our legal civil union. So we discussed all of our financial situations, how much we make, debts, whatever, beforehand. But the details of it we did right after, because my mother had died very young. So I was very cognizant that I had to have a will and testament in place. I'm also a lawyer. So it was like, I wanted to make sure my spouse was able to access everything. And around that time, one of my best friends, unfortunately, passed away at 36 years old, 2 kids and a husband. And it was very unfortunate, because one of the most annoying things that happened was he didn't have the passwords. To a bunch of her accounts. Just dumb, just like when I say dumb, not to her dumb, but these kind of banal administrative things, which make you're already going through a hard time, and now you're trying to figure out passwords. So that was fresh in my mind. And so we sat down to write out a will where literally, and I itemized everything. This is every account. This is every password. This is every single thing. So that we would make it such that if anything happened to either one of us...
How do you do when you have to change passwords every time?
Exactly, right? Yeah. And you have to go and rechange it and the whole thing. No, but and this is, and you have to, you have these secured password protector things,
authenticators,
right? All that stuff. But, that was when we had the details. This is how much is in this account. This is what
Yes.
And it was, and so I think what we're both sharing or we're both have in common is the conversation needs to happen, A.
Yeah.
But then a detailed follow-up needs to kind of also happen.
Yes. For many reasons.
Especially when children are introduced. Exactly. Oh my gosh. Do not get caught up in I couldn't give life insurance to my daughter because I forgot a password.
Right,
Like that is
right.
it must be so frustrating.
Or to not know. Like
to
that
not even
maybe
know.
you
Yeah.
have money invested somewhere.
Exactly.
And you don't know that there is money there. And so you need to make sure that you share that with your husband. And that's for your family. It's for him, but it's for your children too.
So it's like have the conversation, but then follow up with like a concrete itemized meeting, whether it's a prenup, whether it's a will, whether it's just something where you literally articulate every asset, every debt, where to find it, hyperlinks, passwords, all of it. Just because it's so, I couldn't agree more with you. Like you don't want to end up in a situation, whether it's a bizarre divorce or a death, and you're just sitting there wondering, how am I even going to access? Like, I don't even know what I don't know. Yeah. Right? And so
you reminded me also that, I mean, as an expat, I don't know how many expats are listening to us, but you can easily go to, at least like in my case for the Italian embassy, you can go to the Italian embassy and just write, like you can write yourself a piece of paper, on a piece of paper, your will. And just deposit at the embassy, and that becomes a completely, notarized legal document and valid. So that's a very simple way to just have a very, a legal authorized document that can serve in,
And there's a lot of really simple.
It's almost an ugly conversation to have.
But this is the thing. Like this is the reality, and. I think that you're right. Like, so there are like formal legal notarized things that you can do, and they're all available. You don't have to be an expat. There's notaries everywhere. There's also really simple things that you can do, like time-stamped videos where you can read out a lot of things. Right. And that can even be, and it not to say that it would have 100% the same validity as a notarized document created by your attorney. But that being said, it would be more sufficient than absolutely nothing. So don't let it just stand in the way that, I can't get a lawyer and a notary. No, just open your iPhone. It's time-stamped.
Very simple.
In the course of the iPhone, say, hello, my name it is this day. I am of sound mind. And just articulate whatever it is that the two of you or you alone want to articulate. Okay, that's I love how it's, when we talk about family and finances, or the nuclear family in particular, it's about either dissolution of the family. So, protecting yourself in the case of divorce, or about a detrimental thing happening to the family, which is like the case of death, right? So maybe I want to turn this around and make it slightly more optimistic. What about the more optimistic things about family, like having kids? Yes. That is a whole new financial gain. There's one thing you can be like, oh, it's just me and this person, but then somebody else is there. So how does money play a role, or how has money played a role since you had your daughter?
Yes, of course. I think, like, as you said, there is a moment where you sit and you have a conversation for the two of you, right? Yeah. And then I think the situation in a family evolves. So children arrive, and, you need to revisit that financial plan to make sure that it accommodates all the expenses that follow having a baby. So we sat down again, and I think this wasn't immediately after the baby, because obviously you have many things to do when you have an infant at home. But at a certain point, I think around the decision of bringing Asia to school, we started deciding, okay, we needed to rebudget the amount of money that, we spend. And then start thinking already forward, and started thinking, okay, we need to financially plan for her to go to the college, to university. And this is the amount of money that we need to save each month for her. So we started thinking about how to create that income, that extra income. And now we are looking into making an investment, like a real estate investment, so that could bring some passive income that can support my daughter's school and expenses, as well as in the future to have an asset for her. So, our investment strategy has changed as the baby came along. There's all sorts of costs with the baby. So I think, you need to just budget that and look at it closer together. So one piece of advice, or at least what worked for us in this sense, was that we created a joint account, which we didn't have before. So the joint account was a great way to have visibility to the expenses that we do for the family, for the baby mostly, but also, all the traveling or, the dinners, whatever we do together. So in that way, we could contribute, equally to a pot of money that goes for the family, and at the same time, keep some independence for the rest of the money that we earn, so that there is that sort of balance.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And now I want to talk about the relationship with money and the spouse. So there's one thing when you're boyfriend, girlfriend. There's another thing when you're spouse. There's another thing when you're spouses and parents. Those are totally different relationships. And especially, and there's a whole other thing when your spouse and you are both on an entrepreneurial track. So you and your spouse both have day jobs, but you also moonlight as entrepreneurs. I know that in my marriage, my husband and I, because we both met when we had very stable roles at the UN, but I decided I wanted to do an entrepreneurial path, and he 100% supported it because we saw this as this is our joint financial strategy. One person's going to be stable, one person's going to go for moonshot, and we kind of see how it goes. So we really do see both endeavors as our joint project. But I'm wondering, I wonder sometimes, would we be able to do this if both of us are entrepreneurs, right? It's really hard to maintain that stability. But at the same time, if we were both stable, would we ever have an opportunity to, maybe hope and dream that maybe in 5 years we will never have to do anything ever again, right? So I think I'm wondering, how do you guys balance this? What has been your chosen route? Are you still kind of trying to figure this out? Because I know a lot of our female users at Bixie, our female app users and members of our community, have day jobs, but also have side hustle jobs. And I also know that a lot of their side hustle jobs, we were even, at an event yesterday, they're kind of taking over their whole lives and becoming these massive opportunities to become thriving businesses. But they also are but my kids, the school fees, my husband, he also has a business. How do you, what is your relationship with your spouse and your ambitions, and how does money play a role in that?
That's a very complex,
super complex
situation to respond to. I mean, I think it's just always evolving. We're always reconsidering. I think the key for us is more about being collaborative on this. So just to really have, the time to sit down and discuss what we think it's more strategic. So, okay, you want to do this. Let's say my husband is starting a new venture. He will sit with me and discuss about it. And then we'll review, let's say, how much time we will need to do that. So how can I cover his time with my job, with my, side initiatives? So time is very important besides the financial aspect.
Time is
a resource. Yes, it's money. So we sit down and we together decide how to support each other, to implement, the plan, and to take the job, or to take the business or the venture that we want to take. So, it has been changing over time. We both know, and I think that's again about setting the expectations. So we both know that we want to guarantee stability to our daughter.
Of course,
that's priority. So we both know that, we can experiment, we can, work towards different types of ventures, but still we need to have an insurance. Still, we need to have, money for a house. And so we sit down and we basically budget every time if it's possible, it's not possible. Maybe we need to still keep our day's jobs until we can really have that freedom. And we want to work towards that freedom. So my husband is doing everything to become independent in that sense, and and I support him too. So I think that's my answer.
Yeah, I think also there's one of the things that I want to maybe flag, because family or finances and family. So there's a lot of the things we talked about was about safeguarding when things go wrong. But I often think of also the family is the original economic unit, right? And you will actually achieve more if you do work together.
Yes.
So me alone doing everything would be very difficult. Me with my partner, who is a full partner, and, a person I chose for many reasons, in addition to the fact that he's brilliant, I know we can achieve so much more together. And I think that so often I meet a lot of couples who are like, oh, but my ambitions and it's like, you have to have a joint dream.
Yes.
You have to have a joint dream. And if you have a joint dream, you can accomplish so much more because it's like you and another high capacity person operating together. Like, of course, you're going to achieve more. But when you start to not have a common dream and it feels like, oh, I'm giving up something or this person's giving up something, that's a recipe for disaster. And you're not maximizing the whole point of the family. The reason the family is the original economic structure is because you are stronger together. Like, you will produce more economically. That was why we had marriage and children in the first place. You will produce more economically.
So true.
If you have the same vision and you approach it together strategically. Once you start dividing, it's not going to work, right?
Right.
So I think so much of these conversations that we're actually encouraging people to have are about like laying down our vision. So, you and your husband, me and my husband, the same, like, our vision is, how do I retire before my 45th birthday? So like, if we're both on that track, let's move towards that vision, right? But you need to have that clear discussion. What's our joint vision for like my life? And it can change, right? Like, so punctuated moments, illness can change everything.
Completely.
Having a kid can change everything. Having a bunch of kids all of a sudden can change everything, but you need to be able to have those conversations at the right times to make sure that you're still on the same page.
Yes.
And as long as you're on the same page,
it's okay.
It's going to work out.
Yeah, it's going to work out.
And it's going to work out better than if you were alone.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
Definitely. So now I would ask, this is something, so I have a daughter and I have 2 more on the way. What would you teach your daughter about money that you wish you would have known throughout your life? I know a lot. I wish I knew so many things.
I know. I feel the same. I think like there is one thing that bothered me throughout my career, and I wished I knew and I received better guidance on that, and that was salary negotiation. I felt that, I always had struggled to do that, to go to my boss and tell that, I could earn more money, that I was supposed to earn more money. And I think, that's a very important conversation that I want to have with my daughter. I want to empower her to be able to negotiate salary. And I think this is, as you know, an issue that, regards every woman on earth because there is a clear wage gap, right? I mean, I think the latest estimates is that every woman makes of 0.80 cents of $1 compared to a man. So it's a real issue, and I think it's gonna change probably. But I think I wish that I had that learning. The other thing is really about, it's a little bit broad, but just financial planning, just that literacy. And that's why I love Bixie, right? That's why I love what you do, because we need to learn from when we are young girls on how to save money, how to make money, how to plan, because we need, I come from Italy, and in Italy, my parents, and probably, most of the parents, because, 50 years ago, people had fixed jobs with the retirement plans built in. No, hospital was free in Italy, so nobody had to really worry about retirement because their retirement was pretty much set. Yeah. But for us, it's completely different. Nobody told me that I had to plan for that. I'm learning as I go. And now I'm really serious about it because I'm getting closer to retirement. But I mean, that's a very important, a very important thing to keep in mind. We need to learn how to plan. And as soon as we do it, the sooner we do it, the better. Yeah. So I wish that I knew that, and I'm gonna teach my daughter for sure, just to be aware and saving. And just a little tip, I heard that, or I read somewhere that a parent to teach how to save with the children was matching. Every $1 that they would save, the parent was giving an extra, matching with another $1. So you can even do it in, there are different approaches, but it's important to learn that part. And then one thing that I think it's very important, and I already start doing that with my daughter, is teaching her about generosity. So about giving, right? Which is part of the privilege of having money and being in a better financial situation. So like, even now when we go to church or something, like she needs I teach her to give the money. And I think that's a very important thing to
we actually just had that conversation on another podcast. Please tune in. It's on finances and your faith. And this actually came up because generosity, that act of giving, is not like magic. Oh, you give and everything works out. You're actually changing behaviorally. You're changing your relationship with money. And this is especially important for women, from a scarcity mindset to a more abundant mindset that transfers into how you approach investments and how you approach money in general. So really just using that muscle of like giving it away generously. One thing that is phenomenal, which I have found and I'm always astounded by, every time I give away money, I get like tenfold back. It's super weird. And I tell you, it's random. Like I'll do something random, like, oh, just give away a couple $100 to a cause. And the next week, somebody will like send me a few, like I don't even understand where it came from. And I'm like, this is so weird. Every single time. There was this period during the pandemic that my husband and I, because, people were, like there was a lot of challenges economically, I think, for a lot of people. So we decided, we're like, let's just give away, like let's allocate 10% of the money that we make to just giving. Like, so whether that's filling the food pantries that were all over the city at the time, or like giving to certain causes, we're like, just do it. And I tell you, that was probably one of the most like investment rich years like ever. I just thought, this is so bizarre. Like the fact that I am intentionally giving money away and I'm like 10xing, like this doesn't make any sense because I'm giving away. And it's like, no. You're kind of changing your relationship with money and it always comes back. Yes. I couldn't agree more that just the act in of itself, you stop being like, oh, let me save every penny.
Exactly. The greediness. You don't want her to be greedy about money. We need to be smart. We need to be intelligent about how we make money and we earn money and everything. But at the same time, we need to be conscious so that we need to give also back to our society. So absolutely. I think I want to teach her that. Yeah.
So to round us out, what are 3 strategies that you would impart to our listeners when they're approaching their nuclear family and finances? So what would be the 3 hot tips that you would recommend?
All right. So I talked about the
you started having a discussion. You started, and then you mentioned having a detailed follow-up meeting.
Yes.
Right? That's either the baseline is like a prenup, the baseline is a nuptial agreement. That's also a possibility. A nuptial agreement it's like a prenup, but it's rather than protecting assets, it's about how do we plan on organizing everything.
Right.
And then, so those are the 2 things that you'd mentioned. But
So the joint account, which I think I mentioned, I think it was a good way for us. And I'll say that also along what you said about reviewing the expenses together. And I think the joint account gives you the ability to review what are your expenses, which is an incredible exercise. Like we've done it with my husband. Recently we realized that we were spending so much money for food. Yeah. So I think that's very important to, be aware of what you're spending in order to readjust it and rebudget. So I think, that's one thing. And of course, as I was saying, reviewing and budgeting together, that's very important. Yeah. So you can, and then the other thing is to create a passive income. I think that's important. And it's just for me important because as things change, financial situations change, right? So you need to be prepared for the worst. So I think having some extra, diversified income in the family is also a good way to support your finances. So I think how many were there? I think there were a few.
Yeah. So I think if I were to break it down into 3, it would be part 1 would be have the discussion and then have a detailed follow-up discussion. That's number 1. Number 2, have joint budgeting and revisions together.
Yes.
The kickstart for that, how you trigger that, is open a joint account. And that's really going to be a great trigger to see how everything is going. And the last thing is try and conceive of together jointly some form of passive income that kind of protects the family as an entirety, because layoffs happen, jobs change, illnesses happen, and you just want to always make sure that your money is working for you somewhere else and not just from a salary, because that could be quite impactful. Mm-hmm. So I think those are really fantastic tips. I think I would say that, thank you so much for your honesty in today's podcast. I think a lot of people learn a lot of things. We'll also include, inside of the Bixie app, we'll include some of the documents that Sara was mentioning, examples of like, what does a prenup agreement look like? What does a nuptial agreement look like? What does a will agreement look like? It doesn't have to be super complicated. And really, it's being used to kickstart a conversation between you and your spouse, rather than just, dancing around a really, really important issue for the family. So I want to thank you again for joining today's episode. We learned so much, but don't worry, everybody. As I mentioned, you don't have to jot it all down. Today's podcast will also be available inside of the Bixie app, along with the reference materials I just mentioned to help you on your journey. So what do we always say at Bixie when people ask, but I know I have to invest, but when do I do it? The answer is today. Take action today. Join the Bixie movement, download our app, visit our website, join our weekly live events. They're every Thursday at 6:30 p.m. Manila. Do whatever you got to do to make that money, honey. So please join us for our next episode of Bixie Speaks, where we will explore yet more issues. So we're going to explore a rather controversial one in our next episode. We're going to explore fertility and your finances, because this is a big one. So thank you again. I'm your host, Rosalia Gitau. Over and out.